Have you ever thought about the consequences a simple post on social media can have on your life? Imagine being fired for something you wrote outside of work. That is exactly what happened to me. And today, I am going to tell you how everything fell apart because of a comment on social media. But is that really fair? It all started on what seemed like an ordinary day. I was at home after a long work week, and I decided to vent on social media. It was not anything too serious, just a comment about a situation I thought was unfair in the business world, something many people comment on every day. I did not mention any names, I did not directly reference my company, but it was enough to change everything. A few days later, I was called into a meeting with HR. I did not think it was a big deal. But as soon as I walked into the room and saw the serious look on the manager's face, I knew something was wrong. "We have received feedback about a comment you made on social media," he said. In that moment, my heart sank. I never imagined that something I wrote outside of work could have this kind of impact. As soon as the meeting ended, I found myself in a state of shock. I walked out of the room with my head down, trying to process everything that had just happened. A simple comment on social media had cost me the job I had worked so hard to build. What hurt the most was that, in my mind, I was simply exercising my freedom of speech, something that should be my right as an individual. That day, I went home with the feeling that something was deeply wrong. The company I thought valued authenticity and individuality seemed, in fact, to want to control even what we did outside the workplace. What had once been an environment that encouraged me to be myself now seemed like a space where every move outside of work was being watched, as if I could never truly switch off my professional persona. As I sat on the couch, replaying that meeting over and over in my mind, doubts started to creep in. Did I go too far with that comment? I wondered. It was just a vent about the corporate world in general, something I had seen plenty of other people doing on social media, but now I was paying a high price for it. The sense of injustice consumed me, but at the same time, guilt began to seep in, making me question if I should have been more careful. In the days that followed, the impact went far beyond the loss of my job. I began to notice how people's attitudes toward me were changing. Many were supportive, but at the same time, there were those silent looks of judgment. Colleagues and acquaintances would ask questions. "Why did you post that?" Or "Did not you think about the consequences?" Those questions echoed in my mind, but what bothered me even more was that most of these people were just as used to expressing their opinions on social media. It was such a common part of our daily lives, yet somehow, in my case, it had crossed a line. I started to feel isolated, as if I had done something irreparable, even though I knew I had never intended to hurt anyone. As the weeks passed, my confidence began to crumble. Losing my job was not just a financial blow, it deeply affected my self-esteem. I had always seen myself as someone careful and conscientious, but now it felt like everything around me was out of control. I started avoiding social media, afraid that any new post could land me in another difficult situation. The things that once brought me lightness and relaxation had now become sources of anxiety. The feeling of constantly being watched did not leave my mind. I began to wonder if the freedom I thought I had on social media was real or just an illusion. After all, if a company can interfere so directly in my personal life, what else can be monitored? The line between what is personal and what is professional had become completely blurred, and I no longer knew where my rights began and ended. At home, the impact was also felt. I did not know how to explain to my family what had happened. It was hard to admit that a simple comment, something I had done without much thought, had triggered a chain of events that led to my dismissal. The weight of responsibility crushed me, and the fear that this could ruin not just my career, but also my reputation, was always present. Despite everything, frustration gave me the strength to keep questioning. Was this dismissal really fair? Do companies have the right to control what we do outside of work? And what worried me most, are we all subject to this kind of punishment, even when we are just being honest? With each passing day, these questions echoed louder in my mind as I tried to find some way to rebuild my life. After days of dealing with emotional confusion and the weight of the dismissal, I realized I needed clearer answers. This could not end like this. I needed to understand better if what happened was really something I should accept passively, or if there was room to challenge the company's decision. So, I decided to seek legal advice and find out exactly where a company's right over an employee's personal life begins and ends. I talked to lawyers and labor law experts, trying to find an explanation for what had happened. Most of them told me the same thing. Many companies, especially for more visible roles, expect employees to maintain a consistent image with the organization's values, even outside the workplace. Any behavior that could reflect poorly on the company, whether on social media or in public, can be grounds for disciplinary action, including dismissal. While this seemed like a common reality, I could not accept the idea that my personal life and my freedom of expression could be monitored so closely. This realization opened my eyes to a much bigger issue. After all, where does professional life end and personal life begin? It was a question I'd never seriously asked myself until that moment. How can we maintain a free personal identity if, all the time, we are measured and judged by what we do and say outside of work? And, more importantly, is this thin line between the personal and professional being increasingly invaded by corporate expectations? I also reached out to former coworkers and close friends. I wanted to understand if others had gone through something similar, or if they feared it could happen to them. I was not surprised to find that many already felt intimidated by social media, avoiding posting more controversial opinions or even personal details, out of fear that it could interfere with their careers. The idea that we are constantly being monitored, even without realizing it, was already a silent concern for many. These conversations made me reflect on how much we accept these invisible rules. Deep down, we know companies want us to be extensions of their brands, but we rarely question how far that can go. When this all started, I was angry, frustrated for losing my job over something that seemed trivial. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the issue was not just my dismissal, it was a systemic problem. Are we ready to live in a world where every action and word, even outside of work, can be used against us? Are our personal opinions, even when unrelated to work, really grounds for losing our jobs? Throughout this process, I realized that my situation was just a reflection of a larger issue. Freedom of speech, which we value so much, is increasingly conditioned by corporate expectations. And as social media continues to be an extension of our lives, the boundaries between personal and professional seem to be disappearing. In the end, I was not able to get my job back, but I gained something different, a deeper understanding of how the corporate world has a greater influence on our lives than we realize. The experience made me rethink not only how I use social media, but also the type of control we accept passively. It was a hard blow, no doubt, but it also gave me the strength to move forward in a more conscious way. Now, I want to know, what do you think? How far should a company go in interfering with an employee's personal life? Is this fair, or are we being controlled beyond what we should be? Leave your comment below and tell me what you would do if you were in my shoes. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more like it, do not forget to subscribe to ReactStories and hit the bell to get notified of new videos. Here, we bring reflections that will make you think about life, work, and human relationships. And of course, share this video with someone you think needs to hear this story. See you in the next story.